There we go. All right, so we're gonna begin the working session for November 22nd, 2022 to work on the budget for next year, 2023. There's no pledge, there's no anything else, so we can just get right into it.
We need to still call roll.
Yes, please.
Trustee Hartshorn,
Yes.
trustee Mears,
Yes.
trustee Music.
Yes.
Okay, did you work out everything with Caleb and Chief, or are they?
We sit and I've talked with both of them, and then whatever we do, because there's some stuff that's gotta be worked out, then I'm gonna go back to them before we do the December meeting, and then if they need to be here,
Right.
they said they could be here for the December meeting.
Awesome. Okay, well, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I provided several documents to the trustees this evening. The first one you'll find here on the legal size paper.
Legal size, yes.
Yes, this legal size paper here. Basically, it just gives you a rundown of the Montgomery County Auditor's certificate for change request.
Mhm.
And it starts off with the upper portion is the certificates as we've received them from the county. And then as they've been amended through the year and the totals, changes to the totals. Down at the bottom is the appropriated funds and how those have been submitted, and then the supplementals. And then it shows the year to dates across the end to match what's with the currently with the auditor's office as well.
And this is 2022.
Yes, this is 2022. I also gave you guys a packet here. It's got a breakdown of the salaries of what, the cost per employee per department, and it breaks it down to their wages, how much of their wages account for into OPERS, into Medicare, medical and dental. That way we have a full picture of what a single employee cost is to have that employee with the township. And so you'll look, I also did a recommendation for the trustees for going into 2023 and how to set up the pays there to make it easier for budgeting purposes. I think you guys have all looked at that prior. But basically this just gives us an idea, makes it easier for when we go to do the budget as to how much we need to set aside. You'll also see in here, there's two other documents. One is the dental plans. We are allowed to go ahead and stick with Superior Dental, which is what we've had even
Right.
through the county, even though we're not doing the medical through the county.
Mhm.
To switch over the dental, we had to have at least 2 employees participate. We currently only have 1 employee that participates.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Superior Dental and they said, because we are still an affiliate of the county, we can still keep the current plan that we have in place.
So the one person can.
Yeah, he'll still have the dental through here. And then I got an email back after we got the last quote from the SACA healthcare coverage through the chamber. 2 of the employees that had completed the form fires let me know that they will not be picking up coverage. So I had to notify them because of that change, they had to get it requoted.
Yes.
And the requote actually came in a little bit lower. It's like $20 a month lower than what it was for the original quote to us.
Okay.
So that's where all those numbers came from. If you're looking at the breakdown, per employee, where the medical costs come in and the dental costs come in. Now, I know that you guys had an opportunity prior to look at, because I had emailed out to all of you guys, my recommendation for the budgeting for the trustees and the fiscal officer. Did anybody have any questions, concerns about the splits?
Yes.
Okay, trustee Mears.
There's always one. There's always one.
Well, I was just going over this and I had some concerns. So I kind of finagled it, and I'm not a fiscal officer by any chance, so correct me if I'm wrong. But it just seems that we take road and cemetery, we take quite a bit out of there. And so I kind of did a difference, So I figured it out, like police, we take 123, road and cemetery, we take 113, general, we take 128, and trash 0.36. But there again, like I said, I'm not the fiscal officer, so maybe you can help. Because I'm afraid, because road and cemetery, there isn't as much money. That's what I'm worried about. Because I know that we have a bunch of carryover, but that carryover will be gone. And I know he has some things that he wants to do, like 2 or 3 culverts and some roads. Sorry.
No, sorry, I was getting ready to jump in there and I thought you were.
Okay,
stopping.
go ahead. No,
So our issue is that we don't have any one bucket that's deep enough,
no,
unfortunately.
Yes.
And I know Caleb has concerns. I know Chief has concerns.
yes,
Unfortunately, the trustee and fiscal officer salaries are fixed
yes,
and the money has to come out of somewhere.
right,
So laying it out like this, where it's actually fixed percentages where we don't have to. I don't know about everybody else, but I've been very meticulous
Yes.
with my percentages.
Yes.
So, because I wanted to honor what we had said, like for this year, that the police wouldn't be over a certain percentage.
right,
Our problem is that our general fund is too shallow.
yes,
And every other fund, it's not a matter of what they have coming into it. This is something that has to come out of it.
Right.
So if there was an option of being able to pull it from somewhere else, the road and bridge gets I think out of all the funds, it gets the most influx of funds on an annual basis.
okay,
Because it gets the permissive tax, gets the road and bridge, and isn't there a third one?
It gets the motor vehicle tax.
Motor vehicle
gasoline
gasoline tax,
And the permissive tax.
Permissive. So, while not optimal, we have, I mean, basically each one of us makes what, 13,374.
Yeah.
So if not there, where? There's no optional bucket,
Right.
unfortunately, but I share your concerns because this is another issue of having a township that doesn't have business. It doesn't have additional tax revenue that's generated.
yes,
We get nothing from the agriculture directly in funds. We
right,
get other stuff, from the farmers in our community, but we are a bit hamstrung when it comes to there are certain things we have to pay for and we can only pull the money out of. And unfortunately, our general fund doesn't have enough of an influx to
Right.
sustain us like a lot of other townships.
Right.
So if there was someplace else to pull it, but really there isn't. I mean, what we have laid out here is basically the funds that are available. Now, the only thing that would be more, and I don't know what the ceiling is on the trash, because we have an operational
Right.
overhead there, that may be able to go up over 10%, but not by much.
right. And like Charity explained, because we don't want to go too much because then we would have to up it and we already did last year, a couple years ago, which that's not what I'm asking. I just want to make sure that there's money there. And I also think it's time for these 2 gentlemen to get a raise because they've been here over a year and we've not given them anything.
Right.
So I think it's time.
So Caleb is a little bit different because, well, not really. I mean, we could assess his salary at any point, which I think that's fair to do it heading into the new year.
Yeah,
For chief, that's something that we're looking at after the beginning
Right.
of the year as well. So that's on track. That's
Yes.
something we're gonna be looking
Yes.
into. The one constraint that we have is making sure that both budgets can
yes,
take that
yes,
with everything else.
right.
So,
Because I just know, with talking to Caleb and stuff, like he said, there's a couple of culverts he wants to do and things like that, which I understand the way he explained it. Because if you do it, then he gets it fixed, but then he doesn't have to come in when there's a rainstorm and give you overtime. So if he fixes it, we don't have to pay this overtime because he's coming in because it's
Right.
flooded.
and part of that too gets back to what we were asking earlier this year about a prioritized plan for the next 5 to 10
Right.
years. We're never gonna get everything done in one swath.
Oh, no.
But having a plan on how to do stuff in an iterative approach where we're doing a bit as we
Yeah, as
can
go-
or as we can
yes.
afford it. We've got. Right now. You can run down the current budget numbers that we have. We don't currently have enough for the police force that we need,
Right,
but we're we're heading towards being upside down on that like we were with the firefighters.
Right.
When it comes to the roads, we have enough to operate and update some of our equipment,
Right.
but not to take on large projects.
Right.
So
Right.
there we need an iterative approach for how to
Right.
do that. You know,
And I didn't mean to cut you off,
Nope.
but some things with like the police department, with the state of everything and the money and everything else, I know people's hurting. But I think there's sometimes some changes you can make, like they work 12 off a day, or you know what there's always, I don't know what I'm doing.
well, no, I know what you're saying, like different approaches to
Yes,
being able to
different
spread the money
approaches.
further,
Yes,
but in the end, it still comes out to approximately the same amount of money spent. It's just
Exactly.
spent in different
yes, exactly,
amounts.
exactly.
The issues that I wanted to also kind of put out there, if I had a whiteboard, I would mark it up a little bit. We've talked in the past that, we have the fire levy that I hope passes on the 29th.
Yes,
We have the need for a police budget of some kind,
right,
possibly a police levy there. The cemeteries, the statement of the cemeteries will likely require a persistent cemetery levy.
yes,
And then we look at the roads and bridges. And, the issues that we have with trying to get funding through the OPWC is proved last year, it's not guaranteed.
No.
And to be able to sustain the roads and manage them the way that they need to be managed, we need an influx of funds for that too. So is that an additional some kind of roads levy to
right,
be able to maintain and we don't have a lot of roads in the township that we manage, but
no,
the ones that we have
We
are
have-
old.
yes.
A number of them are single lane.
Yeah.
They need to be updated and maintained better.
And I think with us being such a small one, they don't look at us like they do Washington Township or those.
And when they look at it though, they look at it purely on the numbers.
Yes,
So being a one lane road in the middle of the country that gets 3 cars a day,
exactly. Yes,
you get no points.
No,
You end up falling off the end. Whereas something in the heart of Dayton
yes,
that was just fixed last year will get fixed again this
Yeah.
year because it's high throughput, large traffic, impacts local businesses, impacts a number of things. They end up with a much higher number. So that's where working through a multi-year plan comes in, is because we have problems that we're starting to feel now, but this township's gonna feel them in the next 5 years.
exactly.
Hands down, there's barely an appetite for a fire levy.
Right.
And there's more levies likely coming. And we have to maintain the stuff that we have to maintain, So there's no way around it from this side of the table. We have to find a way to do the budget, make sure that the elected officials are paid, make sure that there's money coming in to be able to do the projects that need to be done, not just, hey, that would be nice to do, or that would be something that maybe we can get done. There's stuff we have to get done.
Right,
So to me, setting the percentages at a fixed amount for the elected officials, efficiency wise, it just makes sense. We're not going month to month with floating percentages that change based on
no,
what's going on and
Yeah.
everything else.
I just, when I initially saw this in chair, you did a good job and everything else. But after looking at it, I'm thinking, why are we taking so much from there and not enough from this one? I was thinking,
Well, and as I kind of tried to explain to Caleb a little bit with it too, is in essence, those are 2 different departments.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they're both under him,
true,
but they're 2 different departments.
Which one, roads and cemeteries?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're funded separately.
Yeah. but in the long run, eventually, we're gonna run out of room in the cemetery. And that was something when Dale Sim was here that we talked about, contacting Sycamore Woods, or am I right? The park, about maybe donating like 5 acres, and then that was coming off Wolf Creek there, and we could, do that, but that's gonna cost how much to get everything clear?
Well,
I mean-
and not only that, the other thing is that if we were to acquire land,
Yes,
The township can go out and acquire land. We could
Yes.
acquire some farmland and turn in a 5-year period, convert it into a cemetery. It takes money to buy it. Put in the
Get it ready.
improvements, ensure the groundwater is not gonna be
right.
damaged or anything
Yes.
else. Do the EPA studies and everything else that has to be done. There you don't have to clear it, but there's more
Right.
legwork to do to actually prepare it.
No,
So
I agree with you.
there's options there, and we did talk about that. I think that was last year. We talked
Yes.
about reaching out to Sycamore State Park
Yes.
and seeing if that was possible there. We had just missed that property had been sold right behind the cemetery.
Which I believe is, I just drove past it. I always feel like it's still sitting empty. Is that?
Oh, there's cars, not the one that they tore down. There's one right behind
Okay,
the cemetery.
Gotcha. All right,
Yeah.
all right.
That's the only house
Okay.
on that street, yeah.
But, you know, that's something else is we have limited space in the cemeteries.
Mhm.
And to continue to maintain the cemeteries we have to have an influx of those funds. And that's not just by increasing the amount per plot or grave, right? So that's another thing is when we start looking down the road. How do we want to approach that? Because based on our current spending, what was the number currently on the cemetery fund? Is that like 200 or is it down to 60?
60,000?
I think,
126?
Yeah, 126, 955, 87.
Okay, there it is.
But now that's for the
Out of
year,
that-
that's doesn't take out any of the expenses that have come out this year.
No, and that's what I'm saying is that we have it being mowed, being upkeep, paying for the maintenance crew to go out there and dig and bury and close. That money's not gonna persist.
no,
You know, do we know how much we spent in the last year?
60,600, I believe is
Well, that's what's been appropriated.
year to date, right?
Mhm.
And so we still had 62 over.
I mean, so you'll see having 62 left over that hasn't been appropriated. We rolled over 75,000
Right.
Okay, so. we've
from the first
spent
year, so
more
we've
this year.
spent some.
and the reason, and I want to make that clear to everybody, the reason that we spent that money was because that money was not spent before.
Right.
So we're replacing things that were broken or
Well, we had to have trees removed. We
Trees
had to have
removed,
the
truck
fencing removed.
fixed, this, that, whatever, because it was not maintained at that,
Right, the money wasn't being spent as it should have been, it was being
Right.
held back.
it was being held
And we had
back.
a whole lot of things that all had to be dealt with in the same
Exactly.
year, so. So back to the question about the fixed percentages. I share your concerns, but I don't really see anything that we can do. I think this is probably the best way moving forward. Have fixed percentages for everyone, so that way it's a given every month. It makes the appropriations easier. We don't have to move for appropriations as the year gets later on. So for this, I don't have anything to add with this. I think this has been
No, the
planned pretty
way,
well
the
and
way you explained it, but it was just the initial shock. I'm thinking.
no,
why
they're
did
sticker
we-
shock.
Yeah, why are we taking this versus this? So,
Right.
Yeah.
And remember, Chief Littleton, prior to this year, didn't know what was coming out of his budget month to month as the trustee and elected dollars were coming out.
yes,
He had no visibility of it and was wondering why his number was depleting outside of his budgetary planning. So
Well, now, another thing too, to keep in mind, and this will be something that the trustees will have to give some thought to. As you know, we start to approach the end of the year, beginning of next year. Is the numbers that I presented to you are based on. Everybody maintaining their current salary
yes.
and not taking an increase at the first of the year.
so we were,
On trustees,
Yes, actually, it changed a few years back. That they do a COLA increase for
Oh.
elected officials as well.
I thought you got your, whatever it was.
we had that whole conversation about where it's
That way.
based on your election year.
Right.
So now they're doing a cost of living increase every year.
Gotcha, okay. Can you turn that down?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what we will have to decide with part of the budgeting when everything gets completed as to whether
We want to take that or
the
not.
increases or stay where we're at.
Gotcha. Okay.
which we can do that.
Yeah.
But that's not fixing the underlying problem.
No, no.
Because it's
Probably not,
every year. it's
probably not
gonna go up.
exuberant about the money either.
No.
Well, but if you look at over a 10-year
Well,
period,
it would add up.
it adds up pretty quick, so that's just one thing to keep in mind is that it lightens the burden, but it doesn't alleviate the problem.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind as well.
So then the next group of worksheets you guys are gonna find are the ones that's the financial worksheets, the budget. And these came out of the UAN system. There's basically, it's a forecasting tool that they have. Where I look at the revenues from the last 3 years and current year. And base what I anticipate our revenues will be for the following year. Now, these aren't set in stone numbers, they're gonna vary and stuff, so I kind of lean on the more lenient side with it. You'll see, like if you look here. A lot of them I stay in line with, but like I've gone down license and permit fees on the general fund. Yes, back in 2021, we generated $6,912.29 in license permits and fees. But this year we're only sitting at 3,800.
Right.
So I factored in about 4,000, kind of did an average out on them.
What is the amount listed as other under intergovernmental?
Okay, that's the local government funds that comes from the state. That's the LGF.
Okay, so why was it up so high in 21? Do we know?
I do not know. That's one of those things that I'm not even sure
It was
where
just-
those funds are generated from. I know a portion of it comes through a House bill that was
Right.
passed some time back. But I'm not even sure how they do come up with that calculation.
Right, and we got none of that this year. So if 21 was a overpay
Right,
or a surplus pay, and then this year we got nothing.
yeah,
Right.
you gotta
So
prepay.
It evens out. That's what I was getting to is, just want to make, I was looking at why the numbers were so obtuse in 21, but that's where it was, is that,
Well, and then a lot of it, the numbers kind of, I think, jumbled back and forth with COVID and the way a lot of stuff was funded and receipted and all of that. And then if you look down a little bit farther down the page, you have the first top section shows revenues.
Mhm.
And then under revenues, you have your expenditures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things I want to make sure that everybody understands, and this was part of the minutes or back in September when you guys accepted the rates and amounts.
Right.
I mean, I know you guys, have an understanding of it, but our general fund only receives from levied funds about a little over $35,000 a year. That's it for the general fund. Outside of that, local government funding, House Bill 68, all of those, that's the only other source we have. Of course, the general fund also handles like the zoning permits and stuff. So there's a separate line down at the bottom. You'll see zoning is kind of separated out, but it's still encompassed in the general fund.
Right.
And I mean, I'll be honest with you, our general fund took a very big hit this year because of zoning. With the one particular case that we've got going in or going on, that's been going on for a couple of years, we collected $475. And between the certified mails that has to go out, the publications that have to go out, the salaries that are owed to the BZA members, the board, we've spent a few $1,000s.
Yes.
And of course, that has to come from somewhere,
Just on one case.
just on one case.
And see, that was something that I was gonna bring up later on, probably now it's not the appropriate time. But I don't think people understand, and then they wonder about, this, like when we're talking about this. So what do you want? Do you want to do zoning or do you not want to do zoning? You want your neighbors just to put 20 cars in their driveway or? No,
Well, and they don't understand what goes into it.
No,
How much we pay on a single mailing.
Well, and then to add to that too, it also took a hit where we're talking about with the properties in Perry or in Piermont.
Yes,
Because we spent over $500 just in mailings to mail out to everybody that we had to mail out to, just to get to the point we're at now. I mean, and who knows?
yeah, because it's
other-
just not, when Karen does a mailing. Say you want to do something, that's fine, but she has to do a radius of so far, and then you have to send a certified letter, and they're what, $7, $8? And that's killing us.
Right. Well, and with the Piermont properties, the thing with that is it's not just the radius. It's anybody that could have any interest in the property.
Yes,
Any banks, any relatives, even distant relatives, those all have to be sent by certified mail.
but according to Karen, hopefully, with through the land bank, they're trying to help us, and we may be able to recuperate some of that money. I'm just,
We've been trying to recoup
I know.
some of that money for a while now.
I know, I'm just, hopefully. yeah.
And working with the land bank does put us at risk. Because there's certain things that aren't guaranteed with them that may fall back and cause the township to incur those costs.
Yes,
I've spoke with zoning, about, and I want to bring it up with you guys later, about setting some potential rules. For zoning that something like our previous case or our ongoing case. Does not get to that point.
yes,
And if it does, there are going to be additional fees assessed to that.
and I think that's a
have
great
to
idea.
go forward, so.
Yeah.
That's we'll bring that up. at a
And,
later
and
time.
that's another issue in the zoning bucket is that the current zoning text is severely out of date.
Yes,
We're working on that too.
Well, I know, but it starts with having a zoning commission
We're working on that.
that's willing to do it. And I know,
and I think we need to up the fees on our zoning.
and that's the other part of it. is
Yes.
Once you get the tax in line,
Yes.
then you get the or get the
Exactly.
fees increase.
Because we're very, very low compared to everybody else.
Got those lists.
Yes, good. So we're just, right now, basically, everything that we have, we're just gonna have to watch our Ps and Qs, and everybody's gonna have to suck it in, just like
So-
you do at home.
So I wanna say this out loud so that it's clear. This year, we had $69,894 inbound to the township. The township paid out $105,184.66. That is a trend that's going to steepen.
Mhm.
So with us having limited funds coming into the township, the cost of everything going up for how we have to manage and sustain the township. This is one of the indicators here that you see that there has to be an additional influx of funds from somewhere,
Yes,
and it's not gonna make people happy.
no,
But at the end of the day, I mean, how many, just looking at this, if we're basically operating at 160% loss
yeah,
year to year.
Yeah.
If you look at it 5-6 years
Mhm.
until you're operating at a negative balance, so this is the part of the budget that we're not gonna address necessarily here today. But this is something we've been working to try to get in front of and work up a plan that, this is the current expenditures versus, revenue is unsustainable
Right.
for the township. so.
Right. And like I said, I know years ago, there was a time when gas went up and the police department wasn't allowed driving over 50 miles. You know, now if it was an emergency, they could go out, but they sit here and do the administration. I mean, that's something, I hate to do that, but that may come down to it. You know, and I know that's just piddly, but still,
Well,
you figure,
You're gonna see less gas tax coming in.
yes,
People are gonna drive less as the price stays high. You're gonna see less new cars bought.
yes,
So your permissive tax or your tax is going to go down. A lot of our tax revenue coming in from the state is going to probably be less this year,
yes,
coming year.
Well, and to kind of keep in mind of that, if you look at the second page of the general fund, which is what we started off with, look at 23, the forecast, and look at the bottom number.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, you're gonna see this, and a lot of it, it's really gonna be apparent in the police department. And a lot of that comes into the fact that in prior years, when budgeting was done, for an example, on the general fund, in 2019, there was $9,300 appropriated for medical hospitalization. That's for medical coverage. In 2020, there was $4,000 appropriated. In 2021, there was $2,716 appropriated. Now, what I have in here right now appropriated is $18,462. The reason being is, and it's real prominent in the police department, is all four of us here have the potential of carrying insurance through the township. I've gone out and split, as you can see, if you look at the employee cost, I split it out, separating a cost out per department based on where your wages come from. So that's where the $18,462.59 is. That's the average. If everybody here at this table took out the insurance through the township, that's what would need to be budgeted to come out of just the general fund.
But you,
That hasn't happened in previous years. And the thing is I know some people don't, but everybody's entitled to have insurance. And
Yes.
you can't plan and spend the money and then get blindsided, you know? I mean, if something were to happen to one of the trustees or even to myself, and we can't fulfill our role anymore and have to have somebody come in, we don't know that they're not gonna come in and say, well, I know they didn't do it, but I need it.
yeah. Well, and like you said in the beginning, we had so many people and two of them have come to you and you know, but you surely by now, you know who's taking it out.
Well, you do, but you can't plan on that.
Well, no.
Because if that-
They all-
If someone comes in, yes, okay, I see what you're saying.
They all leave and we replace them all with someone who
Yes.
wants it.
Okay, gotcha. Now,
You have to have the funds there to be able to.
yes, okay, gotcha. So that's just kind of like a cushion.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, the biggest example that I'll give you here is going into the police district fund, because of course, you know, that is our biggest fund. And in 2019, this is kind of where I went off a little bit from where I had been guided previously to kind of take the average of the last 3 years in expenditures. And the way it was set up in 2019, there was $14,350 for medical and hospitalization. In 2020, there was $20,144 in medical and hospitalization. 2021 was $28,562. And then this current year, we had budgeted for 30,000 because we were basing it off of the previous years, plus who currently was taking the coverage at that time. But when you sit down and break it out, like I did on the cost for the employee, we really need to be appropriating $100,000 to support that coverage for everybody that would go through that fund that's eligible for those coverages.
Yeah.
Do we have a number set with the amount of unpaid garbage bills for this year?
I do not have that information. Karen has all of that.
We're gonna need that number.
Yeah.
We're basically operating at a $40,000 a year loss. And for 24, it's gonna be -2 based on the current trend of things. So
Yeah. Are we assessing, didn't we say that we would assess our taxes or are we?
We are.
We do, but if they don't,
Aaron submitted it. Yeah. That's the rub, is that it's not a guarantee that
Yeah.
the money's gonna come anytime soon, so.
You may eventually get it.
But, and that's the thing is that, was it last year? Last year, we increased the trash cost because we were foreseeing that,
actually, it was 2 years ago.
was it 2 years ago?
Before I come in.
Right, so basically, we increased it so that it would cover us through the next 5 to 10
Yes.
years without having to increase it or anything.
Yeah.
But because there's so many people that don't pay it, it's basically just,
Well, and when is that contract up? With Rumpke?
Karen's got all of the.
So I feel like it's in the next year or two.
No, I think it's a 5-year contract.
I was thinking it's,
do you know how many people responded to that offer
Which one? What's that?
for the trash?
Yeah.
They had one offer. And that was.
when we bid it out.
Oh,
for-
to bid it out.
To bid it
No,
out.
no, what I'm getting at is that it's going to, there will be an.
Oh, yeah,
So-
well, there's an increase every year.
Yeah, it's got a year-over-year increase.
Yeah.
Yes. Contract.
it's
So that's why we,
substantial
Right.
to catch up. I mean,
yeah, they came back to us for this and that's why we upped it like $3 or $4 more than what they were asking, so we would be covered.
right,
Yes.
when we redo that contract, it's going to be,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have
Well,
an increase of people not
what's
paying.
feeding that to do is that mailing out the trash bills
Yes.
every quarter. It's double in what the postage cost is.
Oh, God,
From the
yes.
time that I came in to what it is now, the postage cost is doubled to do that mailing.
Yes.
and not to mention the time that she takes doing it.
Right.
I mean, I did the math on that. It's exorbitant. Well, we're paying her just for trash.
Yes.
Not just paying her, the entire cost of it. I don't.
Yeah,
that, but-
it takes her at least half a day to print them all off, tear them apart, put them all by zip code. Cause we try to do it by bulk mailing, cause you
Right.
say by bulk mailing, and then, that, so it takes a good half a day, and then when she gets it, yeah.
And I know we talked about the, online billing or whatever, but is there another way to send out those mailings, those trash bills? That's the only way we're gonna be able to do that.
Because you can't guarantee that people have an email address or that they have a way to receive it digitally. So there's always going to be a percentage and
Right.
for this township, it's going to be a greater percentage of people that want it mailed to
Yeah.
them. Now, if they could pay online, they could pay ahead of time instead of having to write a check. That may gain some efficiencies, but it still evens out because you're still mailing out the bills every month.
I know, I
So,
stopped in and talked to Brookville about theirs, and I think they had about 25% participation rate. But that was going up. Every month they had more.
Well, in fact, that's just like the fire levy, I saw comments on Facebook, what is this?
Right.
There's a levy on, and I didn't know anything about it. I mean, we put it in the Brookville Star, we put it on Facebook, we put it on our webpage. I mean, how much more? And if you're not that involved in your township, there's, we can't.
Okay.
well, out of all of the current funds, how many are going to be operating or have a negative balance by the end of next year? Projected.
Right now, we're looking the general fund and the police
Yes.
fund. Everything else, it's just gonna depend on where we're at. Now, the numbers will shift a little bit as things clear out because some of it is, you don't see the true carryover numbers because stuff that's already appropriated, that's got blank certificates or POs out there. It's kind of holding those funds at the end of the year. They'll go all clear out. They'll wipe out. We'll start from, with a new certificate of funds at the beginning of the year. So there's going to be some adjustments there, but the biggest hit's going to be the general fund and the police fund. And a lot of that, like I said, it's just because there wasn't any, when you go from budgeting $30,000 to needing to really budget $100,000 just to make sure you have the funds to cover if the employees want medical coverage.
That's 70,000.
Yeah.
And we're still way in the hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not the problem.
Now, I do know that sitting and talking with Chief, what I gave you guys is based off of the current
Right.
employment. He is looking to make some changes. He asked me, I ran some different numbers. Possibility of not filling some of the positions as they become open. And kind of moving things around a little bit. That will help the budget some, but it's not gonna be our fix either.
No. Good.
And you'll also see, I also did budget differently this year too. For like the overtimes and stuff like that, when I did the cost comparison. Based on the employee, I factored in overtime for all of the employees. At like 4 hours per pay period of the or full-time employees. Because, there's sometimes, I know there's some officers that don't work any overtime. But then there's some that, depending on what's going on, if they have to go to court, if they have to do this,
And there's some that may work the 8 hour
Mhm.
overtime, yeah.
Now, the other thing too. that I would like the trustees to give some thought about, that has impacted the budget at times is, I guess for years, some of the employees were given the option to cash out unused vacation time. And while that sounds good and stuff, it affects the budget, because if you've got somebody that doesn't take vacation and they work every week or, the full payroll all year, and then they said, okay, well, I want to cash out 80 hours of my vacation. Well, that's 80 hours more than what was technically budgeted for their salary.
Well, and part of that is another risk we're operating under, because they've earned that. Whether we pay it out in a chunk or we pay it out over time, they've earned it. And we have to be able to cover it, which I don't think we can right now.
Yeah, but isn't there something in the handbook, Jason, that says you have to turn?
Well, that was something that we were going to make sure was in when we work with Lexipol, is if there was going to be a window to do it. And part of that was more around the police department.
Okay.
And I've let Chief know that he needs to make sure that he can cover that, because if one of his officers comes and wants to cash out a chunk, it's coming out of his budget.
His budget, yeah.
And
And the thing that it also puts us at risk for, at least from my understanding, is like with OTARMA and stuff, because you've got, especially in that line of work, that they're not taking that break.
right,
They're gonna get burnout. There's additional risk
Yeah.
that's involved.
and yeah, so the alternative salary, well, so PTO,
Yes.
sick time, et cetera. The benefit that they're accruing is not something that's currently budgetable.
You say it's not budgetable?
Not, but, well, we can't necessarily pay it. In a given year, every officer accrues, what is it? Is it like
At least 10 days.
at least 10 days a
And
year?
it goes up once they hit 3 years, it goes up and
And they continue to accrue that
Yeah,
forever.
no, we
No,
we
we've kept it
we
to
have a
years.
cap on. it.
Okay,
yeah. Yeah,
But if you have someone that doesn't take the 10 days and then they come to you and say, well, I want to take it and that's 40,000 that we owe them,
but,
we don't have the 40,000.
right,
right.
and sick
It's coming out of Tim's budget.
time isn't capped, but it's not paid out either.
Okay.
So,
That's
so
what I was
we
getting at.
don't pay it out in a bulk. If they accrue it, they can use it, but they can't. Which there again, we're paying it out in lieu of a salary for time that they're off, but.
And
And they can take that with them too, when
Yes,
they go
yes.
to another state
And that's the
position.
big thing, when they go to a different agency, they transfer that. But PTO time, you can only collect it for so long, and then after like 3 months, if you don't turn it in, you lose it. So that's up to you to either take it off.
Mhm.
So,
But some,
Well, our handbook actually has in there that they can carry it for 2 years.
Yeah.
it does.
yeah,
Yep.
yes, that was one of the things that we had to deal with previously.
Okay.
But that's a perfect example that they can earn 10 days of PTO this year and then get to use or lose at the end of
Yes,
23. And that's not necessarily budgeted for that year.
right.
So they're literally pulling it, and whether or not that rides over, I mean, that's the thing, is that if the calculation you did for 4 hours of overtime per employee for the year, or per pay period per employee per year, that's conservative. That should actually be
Oh, yeah.
much higher,
Yes.
but we can't pay the 4 hour.
No.
Right.
So, but you see what I'm saying? This is where the rubber meets the road on this financial conundrum the township finds itself in, is that something as simple as pulling something from one year to the next as a benefit they've earned and accrued could have consequences to it.
Exactly.
Well, and you also got to think in the meantime too, is several of the officers over the last year have gotten raises.
Yeah.
So anytime that they've carried over from maybe last year, if they take it this year, they're gonna get paid it out
Increased rate.
at the higher rate.
Great.
Yeah, we don't lock it in at a rate
Exactly.
when they earn it, which I don't know if we legally can do that.
No.
So, I mean, that's,
And see, that's the thing, I know there's talk with different things with chief. Because that would affect his, depending on what goes on there.
there's a lot of constructive ideas that don't necessarily play well in a township of our constraints. It's unfortunate. I mean, there's municipalities around us, some have unions, some don't, but they enjoy a different amount of funds coming in than we do. We have a lot of farmland, and farmland doesn't generate a whole lot of tax revenue for the municipalities. It just doesn't. So in the meantime, we don't have a way to offset that loss. And we're continuing to operate with it. You're seeing here that multiple funds are going to be operating at a negative balance within the next 2 to 3 years. So,
Yeah, if we were like somebody else that had, an RVs or a hotel or this or that, we could do it, but we have,
Other resources.
yeah, we have no other
well,
resources.
and that's, just thinking outside the box. I mean, there is a way to rezone land to bring in business, but probably those areas that we would do it wouldn't be
Prime places.
prime places for it, right? So,
We're not on.
I think I talked a couple years ago, just spitballing a bit about rezoning part of Piermont to allow for a grocery store or allow for some kind of mom and pop business to come in and be able to serve that community.
Mhm.
It would generate some revenue, not a lot, but some revenue, and plus it would be a benefit to the community there, which, where's the nearest grocery store from there?
Mackens.
Exactly. And that's a good ways away. So in inclement weather or for someone who may not be able to drive or whatnot, there's nothing local within that area. And that's a dense population, unlike the areas that surrounds it, which is vast farmland, right? So, if
I heard they're putting in a hotel there at the corner,
the corner of,
Sulphur Springs. Gonna make it a B&B. B&B.
funny. So, I mean, that's another valid avenue to think about is would there be benefit to building up the Piermont area?
Well, I
It's
think,
the one area in the township that we could do that with.
yeah, and I think you had some good ideas, like I know one time you mentioned like a splash pad. That would be awesome, because there's nothing for the
Yeah.
kids. I think that would, but the cost. And it's something that we want to do, but we don't have the money to do
The
it.
cost to get it, the cost to sustain it, and then the man hours to manage.
The liability.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, putting up a sign, splash at your own risk is still not sufficient, right? Wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, Perry Township is uniquely landlocked
Yes,
to where there's so much farmland that and I'm not trying to upset anyone that has an agricultural background or farming or whatever. But if half of the farmland in Perry Township was converted to residential, we'd have a lot less issues
Yes.
for operating the township. Not saying it would make the township better.
no,
It would just alleviate some of the financial burden that we currently have, because then we would have tax revenue
Right.
coming in based on that land
Yes.
versus operating at a loss
right,
because of, I don't know, and I've been tagged in the past of being anti-farmer, anti-agriculture, but I'm not. I wanted to better understand, how farming impacts a township like Perry Township, where the farmers can get subsidies, the farmers can get a tax break on their land. But the township that has to provide them services takes a loss across the board. That's a conversation to have with some of the state reps that are in this local area.
Mhm.
Won't be a popular topic. But not asking them to change it. I'm asking them, if this persists, this is what we're looking at, and we're not the only ones in the state. What's your plan to overcome this, because this issue that this township has is bigger than the township.
Yes.
This is not something that we can fix. Because if we put a levy out there,
Well, I mean, you just gotta keep taxing your residents, tax your residents, tax your residents. Because,
they like that.
right,
Yeah.
right, because we have bills to pay, like,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
unreasonable to ask them.
And here's the thing too, is that there's a fixed amount. We can't go over 10 mil. It's like 10 mil.
Yep.
And we're close. We're not at 10. I think right now we're right around 7.5,
Somewhere around there.
somewhere around there for all of the millage that's
Out there.
for the residents. So, if you factor that we could do another 2.5 mil, that wouldn't be enough to do the police. It wouldn't be enough to do the cemeteries, and it wouldn't be enough to
No.
manage the township.
Now, even if we max that out, it's not enough.
So,
I agree.
I mean, this is a problem that affects Perry Township, but it's not unique to Perry Township, because when you have these rural townships that have high agricultural land that's squared off for that purpose,
And I think it's a good thing to have that, but when you stop or when you get in a position like this and then you realize, oh man, in like farmland preservation,
Yeah.
you can't touch it. But, people don't understand why we keep going back to you. Well, we keep going back to, it's not because we want to, it's because we're not sustaining. So it's kind of like the fire levy. If this doesn't pass, then you don't get service.
Yeah.
And if we keep going, there will be no Perry Township.
Right.
You will be taken in by New Lebanon or Brookville.
or the county, which doesn't have the
Or the
constraint of
county.
millage.
Exactly, and you will be paying those taxes.
Yes.
Not us. We're trying everything we can to keep the farmland in this, but we need help.
Coexist,
Thank you, yes.
to coexist.
Exactly.
Well, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. What people love about Perry Township is what we have to figure out how to coexist with.
Yes,
Because we have a lot of farmland, we have a lot of farmers. But right now, we're on an untenable path that we're not gonna be able to coexist.
Yep.
So who can we turn to with that? Can we turn to the state? We could try.
Try.
But I mean, let's be honest, in this area, the farmers are their core constituents.
Right.
And they may not be as interested, because it's not either or. There has to be a way to coexist. And it needs something above us to actually set the wheels in motion to even make that possible, or to have the conversation. So,
Well, and to just kind of throw this out there, because I know there's been a lot of talk and a lot of people want to know, why aren't things getting done with the roadways and stuff like that? So I've got up the figures for the OPWC application that we have submitted. And this is for the Providence Pike. Now, the scope of the project is to remove, replace defective roadway culverts, regrade ditches to widen shoulder, widen existing approximately 4 foot total from 14 foot 6 inches to 18 foot 6 inches, paving existing widened road, new asphalt, and adding 1 inch gravel shoulder. Projected cost is $467,000
For a mile of road.
for a mile of road.
I mean, it would take us years to save up that money, and we can't even do that.
Right.
the problem with that is that to even do 25% in-kind labor,
Mhm.
you can't afford it.
Right,
Because one, we only have a 3-person crew, well, 2.5, now it's 2.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff that they have to do in the township, so setting off a couple weeks span where they're dedicated to only that.
Mhm.
That's hard to pull off with funerals and stuff that can happen in the township, so.
Well, and our other hard part with that, and I've had this discussion with Mr. Hoops, is, they've looked at, do they have the ability to hire another full-time person? And I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you, their best bet would be to potentially hire 2 part-time people versus hiring a full-time person, because hiring a full-time person, you're back to that of having to offer the benefits.
The one thing that we talked about this last year was. To bring in, it would offset part-time labor
Mhm.
with them getting credits and stuff for the work that they're doing
And
in
they
their
are
profession.
doing, they are doing apprenticeship
Yeah.
now where they work 2 weeks off and 2 weeks on.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's something that y'all want to do, I can contact them and, I can get that ball rolling.
well, that's what we talked about
Yeah.
before, but we couldn't even afford to do it because we had 2.5 people,
Right.
right? So that may be something worth looking into, is
Right.
just to offset that burden
Right.
in any way that we can.
And you have different programs over there. You have the heavy machinery, you have this, not the small engine, but whatever it's called, where the diesel program that work on, that work on the trucks. Or you have the lawn people.
Having a couple guys come over, well, a couple of people come over and do some of the service on our trucks from time to time, instead of taking it to a place that's gonna
Exactly.
charge us X amount. We could offset some of that, and, I mean, let's be honest, it's good to give back to
Sure
that
it
part of the
is.
community.
Sure it
And for
is.
people to actually see like CTC in their
Yes.
backyard.
Yeah,
like
and
the
our tax
township.
paper, our tax is paying for CTC.
Exactly.
So let's use them.
I have one in my shop.
And I know I bring it up all the time. It's like shop for the cop.
Yeah.
I know you haven't been there, but when you walk in, I didn't mean that. But there's 20 law enforcement kids there.
Right,
They love it. They go to Rob's, they go to the Easter egg hunt.
yeah,
I mean, these kids love it. And to me, something like that, those are kids that may come here.
Well, and honestly, a lot of them, like I know with the criminal justice kids and stuff, they also get credit for community service, and they have to have that for National Honors or National Honor Society, even just to graduate, they have to have it.
Good on the resume
Yep.
when they apply to colleges.
Yeah, well, and another thing that I just kind of want to throw out there, when people question why the finances are the way they are. Is, okay, so I just submitted paperwork to have our certificate of resources amended, which is what you guys had approved at last trustees meeting. With the amendment to our certificate of estimated resources, it brings our total budget for the year to $2,782, or $2,782,496.85. But keep in mind, $1,016,597 of that is what has been carried over from previous years. So we're talking, more than a third of our budget, somewhere between a third and a half of our budget is what's been carried over from past years of not using and not doing things.
Right.
And so when that money is gone,
It's gone.
it's gone. I mean, we'll have carryover, here and there from year to year, but
It'll be
once
much
that's
more.
over. And like, Mr. Hoops and I had this conversation, roadways that needed to be fixed 5 years ago that didn't get fixed are gonna cost an exorbitant more amount now between inflation and just additional years of deterioration.
Right. Well, it's just like the police department, when Chief Littleton came in our cars, the brakes didn't work, this didn't work, so we had, look how much money we spent getting new cars and this and that. It just,
but it's a sunken cost.
say it again.
It's a sunken cost.
Yes,
Because we don't recoup
no,
that money,
no.
but it has to be spent to provide the services that
Yes.
we're required to provide. So,
Exactly.
and that, going back to the current list of funds. We're operating at like between 140% and 160% of what's coming in. So that's how the money that's
Right.
been held or rolled over year to year is gonna be gone within the next couple of years.
Yes.
We've had critical failures in the maintenance garage. Where we've had to replace, 3 vehicles now? We've had equipment that wasn't well maintained that had to be replaced. We consolidated a couple of different pieces of equipment into the Bobcat. But we had to do that. We didn't have the means to do what we needed to do, and we couldn't take the big tractor into the cemeteries.
No.
It won't work. So, I mean, there's one thing that I'll say is that in the last couple of years, we've worked really hard to pull back the curtain and show this is not a for-profit endeavor, right? We have money coming in, but we have almost twice as much going out
Yeah.
as we have coming in, and it's unsustainable. And like you said, people were surprised at the fire levy.
Yeah.
We advertised it everywhere that we could. We put as much information out on the township website as we could. We cross-referenced it with social media, which I understand, not everybody has social media or everything else, but
There was articles, so there's a front page article, in the Brooklyn Star.
yeah, there was
During the year.
and there was one in the Dayton Daily News.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm at a loss of what else we can do.
Exactly.
Because I considered what we did for the fire levy to be very much more proactive as in the past.
Right.
You know? And it still kind of fell short. So, you know, hopefully the levy goes through, but you know, if it doesn't, all these numbers get much, much worse
Yes.
very quickly.
Yep.
So,
Well, and then also take into that where I was talking about the numbers of that 2,700,000. 345,000 of that is the ARP funds.
mhm.
Yes.
So I mean, technically, we are back at 50% of is what we actually have coming in.
And a lot of people I know have asked, you know, well, that money that you have for your police department or the fire levy, all that money that if it would pass, why can't you use that for the?
Right.
They don't understand that money is earmarked for that. You cannot, that's
No.
against.
It's a restricted fund. It can
Yeah.
only be used for that purpose.
Exactly, so.
So was there anything else with your sessions with Chief and Caleb that we need to be aware of or discuss?
No, I mean, I know Caleb's wanting to do a lot of trying to get some road projects done, but it's just trying to figure out, because we've also still factoring in there, we still have our portion of the Wolf Creek watershed still is gonna, it looks like it's gonna carry for us to be able to pay it out to get it out of our budget for next year. So we're gonna have to make sure we're still accounting for that.
What was it? That was like 32?
No, I think it was like 26.
28 or so.
They had to rebid it.
When they rebid it, it came down slightly.
Yes.
Or 26 that we have set aside that
Yeah.
we're just waiting to pay out.
Exactly.
So,
Well, and then we also have to set aside for the OPWC.
Hmm.
You know, that was like 26,000 there
Yeah.
just in cash.
And see, when you were talking about Providence Road, and that's something me and Caleb, and I don't know if that's something that we should do, but I told him I wanted to drive down to Houston Woods to talk to them to see if they would be interested, and I don't know, you know,
Right.
splitting the cost. Because if you go from Diamond Mill to I mean, that's the only
Wolf Creek to
traffic
Diamond
on
Mill,
that road.
yeah.
So I wanted to go talk to them. No, there's one house and it's right behind the
Right
cemetery.
behind the cemetery.
Yeah. But I wanted to see if they would be interested in splitting the cost with this, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, or putting toll booths up at the hunting areas. Or put what? Putting toll booths up at the hunting areas.
Maybe that's, we should do, between the trustees, we'll just sit there.
Up there with a little can.
Like the firefighters used to, I hold the boots.
Are you going to the park? Okay, it's $5.
Yeah.
Okay, so our portion for the Wolf Creek watershed actually came down to $20,866. And then let me pull back up here. I had just had it and I should have gave you the exact figure. I had it up here. But for the OPWC, if that goes through, we have, okay, so the in-kind labors, the 24,000, we have local funds contribution of $43,545.
That's already been earmarked towards that, correct?
Well, that's gonna have to be
Part of the,
part of the budget.
And that's the only way we could get it competitive,
Mhm.
was to pay that much. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I do hope that the residents take an interest. in what we're talking about here and how this progresses, because the handful of options that are at our disposal don't happen without them.
No,
And it's not, to me, it's not practical to think that everything that we need, we could get
no,
to be able to. So there's gonna be some areas that we're gonna end up likely having to cut back. And what does that look like? I mean, does that mean that we have, you know, can't necessarily go down lower than 2 people on the maintenance team because,
Missy likes to drive the truck.
well, yeah, but from a safety perspective, when they're out there, unless you wanna be out there digging in the cemeteries, they have to have 2 people.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's a operational safety
Yeah.
issue. So, you know, there's not a lot of areas that we can actually pull back.
no.
Um,
I think we pulled back quite a bit, to be honest with you. I mean, there's small things that we could make, but
Well, and I'll send out to all of you kind of more of a thorough, in-depth, exactly penny for penny of what we're looking at for projection of expenses. But I'll also put together and send to you what Chief had kind of ran past me as a possible alternative as far as his staffing goes.
Yeah.
That way you guys can kind of look at that and do a comparison. Gives you guys an opportunity before we come in for the, you know, to make any final determinations with the budget, to give some input as to anything you think. And like I said, what I go off of is as I was instructed when I came in, do an average over what the cost have been and the revenue's been for the last, like, so many years. There's gonna be some that will probably be able to nail down the budget for next year.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be some that, and we'll just be doing our temporary appropriations. And we may just have to ride a little bit to do the permanent ones in a couple of different departments till we have a better.
I mean, did you have any idea? I know we put so much money in the gas thing. Did you have any idea that gas would be $4? God only knows, maybe 6. We don't know. So that's really hard to, you know, it's like eggs were 79 cents. Now they're $3.46. Who would have ever thought?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, this is just like running your home budget.
Right, and the thing is, and they're telling you, it's not gonna get any
No.
cheaper anytime soon.
No.
I also wanted to check with the trustees and see if it's okay if I reach out to the aggregate that's through the New Lebanon Chamber of Commerce. To see if they can, if we can do something with the utility costs for all the township. We have 5 separate electric
Yes.
bills.
we can't make a formal decision, but please inquire.
Yes.
Right, well, I mean, to reach out to them to see if they can quote it. I just wanted to make sure it's okay before I.
And I have a question, and maybe I should bring this up at the thing. The light is not working there in Piermont, the light pole, and I know we reported this years ago. Who reports that? I mean, do I call or ASE or
Yes,
AES? Do I,
Yeah,
because it's
They have to come out.
open and nasty.
they have to come out and fix it.
Okay, I can do that. I guess I can I do that or do you have to do that?
Yeah, you can do it.
Okay,
I can send you the information.
okay,
I'll have it out anyway when I'm trying to see if
Okay.
we can do anything different with the electric.
yeah. Because that would be, I think, part of it too, so, okay, cool beans.
Yeah, and the thing is I'll have to wait until we get closer to our next actual either special meeting or
Yes,
actual meeting, because I think you only have a certain time period once you reach out to the electrical aggregates to get locked in that rate.
okay. Got it.
I'll make sure I have that before we do the next. And is there any suggestions on what works for everybody's schedule to do the next, hopefully to do temporary appropriations meeting?
You just let me know when,
how soon do we need to get it done? Just before the end of the year, right?
I would recommend trying to have it done by middle of December.
Can we just tackle it in the Board of Trustees meeting for December?
We can do that if you guys are comfortable with that. I can put together. You guys will just have to, there'll probably have to be some discussion with it though, to make sure that we have everything where we
We
want.
can keep that for the new business,
Okay,
deal with it there, and that's towards the end of the meeting anyhow, so.
okay. Yeah, because that would be December 13th.
It's a good fit.
okay,
All right, is there anything else we need to discuss?
I think I'm good.
Thank you so much for all your hard work. I know
Thank you.
this isn't easy. It's a lot, so I definitely appreciate your hard work in that area. You don't have anything you want to discuss?
I'm good.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Trustee Mears,
Yes.
trustee Hartshorn,
Yes.
trustee Music,
Yes.